We are on the cusp, of course, of the election being called. My tip has always been that it would be called on Sunday for May the 14th, but it may indeed be called on the weekend for May the 21st, a longer campaign. We'll have to wait and see. But I've been talking over the last few days about the strategy of the left, the Labor Party, the Greens, and their friends in the media about how they want to make this election campaign all about anything but substance, anything but policy. They want to make it about Scott Morrison, a character assassination of Scott Morrison. So with that in mind, the Prime Minister decided to front up at the ABC for an interview last night. Here is how it went.
Prime Minister, welcome back.
Thanks, Leigh. Great to be here.
When you look at the threats to your government's survival, they're almost all own goals. Almost all of the incoming fire is from your own missteps or from inside your own party. Why would the public trust you with another term as Prime Minister when many people on your own side don't seem to trust you?
OK, fair enough question, isn't it? It's a fair enough line of attack. You've got to explore these issues. It's part of the election narrative. But if you're a serious current affairs program funded by taxpayers, especially interested in the future of the country, it wouldn't be all you talked about, would it? You couldn't just focus on this stuff for the whole interview, could you? Have a look.
All right, if it's that rosy a picture, why are the polls all showing things tight with Labor in a winning position? Let me put it to you that with the record of performance during COVID, which, as you point out, is better than around the world, and the economy doing relatively well, that there can only be one factor that's playing into the negative sentiment towards the coalition, and that, without sounding rude, has to be you. Come back to some of the criticisms from your colleagues later, but just to ask you about the news of the day, the New South Wales court decision, let's go back to first principles. Why did you decide to intervene and dictate this pre-selection process yourself with a small group of people rather than leave it to local branches to pick candidates? It's the same sort of faceless men scenario that the Liberals used to tear shreds off Labor over. In the past week, we've seen two MPs from in your own party from different factions come out with the most strident criticisms of you. The first was Senator Concetta Fierravanti-Wells, and today it's a state New South Wales MP, Catherine Cusack. But let's look at the range of people who've questioned your character. Senator Fierravanti-Wells, Catherine Cusack, Barnaby Joyce in a text message where he called you a hypocrite and liar. Jackie Lambie, Pauline Hanson both say they felt bullied by you. Julia Banks, Emmanuel Macron said that you lied to him. There was a leaked text from Gladys Berejiklian calling you a horrible, horrible person. You've always been big on Australian values like community and mateship and so on. I wanted to ask you, you've been friends with the former Hillsong pastor Brian Houston for a long time, right? He stood down from Hillsong last week when the church leadership was concerned about two incidents. One was that he had sent a flirtatious text to a staff member. The other was he spent 40 minutes in a woman's hotel room. Why did you kind of disown him last week when you were asked about that, given that he is a long-term close friend?
Struck me pink. Now, that wasn't all of it. It was the whole interview, question after question after question, all about Scott Morrison's character and personality. Nothing about China, nothing about national security, nothing about economic development, nothing about how this country's managed to get through the pandemic. It was just focused on this personality stuff exclusively. Incredibly for the ABC, there was not even anything about climate change. Go figure. It was only the last question of the interview, the last question before a little push to try and get the Prime Minister back for more interviews, would you believe? The last question of substance was the only one that hinted at a little bit of policy rather than personality.
Every federal election, when Australians think about who they want to vote for, there's a few things they can take into account. They can think about who they like and trust more out of you and Anthony Albanese. For the government, they can look to your record. They can also look at your policy agenda going forward. But going forward, where is the coalition's transformational plan? Because for a decade, there's been nothing on company tax, nothing on industrial relations, the things that people would traditionally look to a coalition government for.
Well, it kind of missed the whole point of taxes being reduced for companies and individuals throughout the coalition, and that being their economic reform agenda. But at least it was an attempt to ask one question in that interview about policy. It's extraordinary, isn't it? This is your tax dollars paying for this broadcast. Have you ever wondered whether the ABC is actually a publicly funded, high-minded, objective and fair news organisation that's interested in pursuing the future of this nation and political debates with some intellectual curiosity and intellectual rigour? or whether it's just an ideological organisation based on groupthink and pushing ideological lines and partisan politics, last night in that one interview, you got your answer.